a reminder, this is obviously our data-driven community. Tell your friends, tell coworkers. We want to grow this community even more than we already have, and we appreciate the support, and the attendance we're getting from everyone here. Any feedback that you have on how we can make our sessions better is always welcome. We've had really good attendance, and so that tells me that people are liking the content. So very, very pleased with that. So tell more people, and we're going to continue doing this, right? We go to the next slide here. Today's agenda. So I'll first cover the meeting format very quickly, and upcoming events that we have. The featured speakers today are myself and Jared Schulman. I'm Director of Client Success and Sales for Geomatrix, used to work at Tableau, have been in the product about 9 years now. And then Jared is our lead consultant. He has led a number of our sessions in the past on Tableau Prep. Jared, you did parameters. I believe you did calculations. So today you're kind of taking a back seat, but you'll have quite a bit of input that'll be helpful for the conversation. Presentation today is on Tableau tips and tricks. So what I'm going to do is roll through probably around 35-ish Tableau tips. It's all in the theme of teaching you stuff that will make you faster in Tableau, make you better at the product, and hopefully you'll see some tips and tricks that you've never seen before. So that would be a goal. So give a thumbs up if it's something you've never seen or didn't know how to do, and we will. It's be a good session, and we'll always end with a Q&A panel. I don't know how many questions we might have on tips and tricks, but we will leave some time. If there are questions about the tips and tricks or just general questions that people have, right? So just keep in mind, this is a webinar, virtual webinar format. We have, in recent sessions, allowed people to come off of mute. So when we get to Q&A, if you have a question, you can most certainly come off of mute, but just stay muted if you're not talking. And you could also interject and ask a question as we're going. We want to make these sessions more interactive over time. So you can certainly do that. We will hold a Q&A at the end, of course, if you want to reserve questions. And you can use the chat window as well. Jared, do you mind looking over the chat window today for me?
Got you covered.
Cool. Okay. And then, as always, we send out the recordings. They're posted on, if you miss a link with the recording, we post them on YouTube. It's a Geomatrix channel. We also send out surveys to understand how we're doing, any feedback that you have on these sessions. So we'd love to hear from you there. But yeah, YouTube is where we're storing all of these videos, all of the past sessions, all the future sessions that we'll have. Okay? So our March event that'll be held on the 13th is TBD. We're currently looking at a couple of different topic areas. So we will get out the topic area as soon as we can, probably early next week. We're kind of picking between a few that we think make the most sense for March. That is TBD. Sorry to leave anyone hanging if you're wondering what the next session is. But we'll have that as soon as we can. But it'll be a good one. Featured speakers, myself and Jared Schulman. I just went through our background, but Jared's led a number of our sessions. He's a lead consultant with us, so it's always great to have him here. And I'll be running today. I'll be running through the tips and tricks. I still get in Tableau here and there, so I'm happy to roll through these examples with you. Let's get right to it. Let's get right into the presentation, tips and tricks. And I had a slide here. There are too many to list, right? In previous slides, we've had what we'll cover for today. We actually have so many that I couldn't really put them all down. So that's why you're seeing nothing here. Let me stop sharing. I'm going to reshare in 1 second. Okay. All right, Jared, Chris, quick screen share check. Can you see Tableau here?
Yeah. Yes. It's good.
All right. And Jared, if you could monitor the chat window as well, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
If we have any questions, just pause me. Yeah, if we have any. Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to roll through a number of tips today. The first one, and again, I'm curious, give a thumbs up if you haven't heard or didn't know about these tips. The first one I want to show is what I would call like a right click and drag, or if you're on a Mac, an option, you can hold the option key. And this is what will happen. So if I have on my view, let's just say subcategory, and I want to bring out, I'm going to bring out order ID. I'm going to right click and drag on a mouse, or on a Mac, I'm going to hold the option key. And when I do that, I get this window that might look unfamiliar to people. And what that does is lets me, it gives me more options. So number one, I can just bring out the order ID as it is dimensionally, or I could very quickly, if I wanted to, do a count distinct of the orders. All right, so let me show that again. So it's a right click on order ID. I bring that over and I get this window, right? Now that also works on any measures that you have. So if I right click or hold option and drag out sales, I get that I could just do a sum, but I could also just do average sales. So that can save you some time in your process. Now you could also do different date options too. So if I bring out this order date, I'm gonna right click and drag it to rows. And this could be really helpful because I could pick the date part right off the bat. As you probably know, when you bring out a date field in Tableau, it rolls it up to the year. So that right click and drag or hold option gives us more options. So if I wanted an exact date, for example, I could pick order date discrete. Now I've got every date in my data set. So it's quicker than if we went about it this way. If I drug out order date and I wanted that exact date, I have to go down here and say exact date, and I have to make it discrete. So you can see the time saving right there. It's just a right click and drag, and we have discrete order date, right? That is tip number one. Now, if you're on a PC, what did we decide that shortcut key was? Jared, was it hold Alt, I believe? I think we had.
Yeah, I think Alt works. Yeah, I believe it's Alt on a PC.
Alt on a PC will do the same thing as holding Option on a Mac. Someone check us on that though, as we go through it. All right, cool. The next tip I had, and this is sort of maybe more of a basic one, is how you can set a default number across an entire Tableau workbook. So in this example, I brought out profit. You'll notice that profit is something that we would want to define as currency, right? So if I wanted every time that I use profit to be a currency, you have default properties that you can apply at a dimensional level or really at a measure level. So if I right click on profit, I can go to default properties and I could change and hard code that number format. So I'd come here and do currency custom and make that 0 decibels. And now every time I use that profit measure or any measure that needs to be currency, it'll have that $sign, right? So that's just a helpful tip that you can actually hard code in currencies or different number formats. All right, cool. That's tip number 2. Okay, so let's talk about, this one is called, I called it the calculation editor, the option to drag and drop when you're in a calculated field. So let's pull up in a calculation real quick. So I built a formula in Tableau that is just gonna compute sales for the central region. So I have region on the view, and that's it. And this formula is just a very straightforward if statement. If the region equals central, then return sales. So this trick is cool. So if I wanted just to test my formula, test the calculation that I have, in Tableau, you can actually highlight the entire expression that I have here, and you can drag and drop that into the view. So I could see that these numbers are correct, right? If I bring out sales next to it, I know that my formula is returning the right values. So you can drag and drop this entire expression into the view, right? Give me some thumbs up if you haven't, if these are unfamiliar, you haven't heard about these, okay? All right, so that's the drag and drop calculation editor. This one is what I would call a measure values trick. Let's say that you have in your view, you have a dimension and you only have one measure. So in this case, I have sales. Notice how sales does not have a header. So really, unless I hover to get the tooltip, wouldn't actually know that I'm looking at sales. So if you have one measure, a trick that you can do is to drag measure values onto show me right here. And that will actually display the sales header. Right now, if you had another measure, that's when Tableau populates a header. So that's a nice trick. If you only have one measure, you simply drag and drop measure values right there, and you can see the header. Okay. This is one of my favorites. This is what I would call the ability to type in to the row and column shelf. And there's one other place I'll show to actually return data in the view. So most people, when they start Tableau, they're dragging and dropping the data into the canvas, right? Well, one trick that you could do is you can actually double click into the column and row shelf, and you can type the data from your data pane. So if I just did sales, that would return sales. If I wanted to look at that by category, I could look at that by category. So you can actually double click into the row shelf. You could also double click here, and I could say, let's just say sum of profit is greater than, let's just do 20K or 2000 maybe, right? You can actually do formula fields right there, right? So those are all true. You can return the data in your view. You could also do formulas in this window right here. I love this option. Now, this could be extrapolated into, if you remember the right click and drag, where we got that exact date. If you double click and type in a date range that you have, in this case, I have ship date and order date. If I type in the order date, that will automatically return an exact date that is also discrete. So if you're doing data validation, maybe one of a record or two doesn't look correct, and you need to look at each individual day, it's a really helpful tip. You just type it into the view, you'll have an exact date, save you some time. Cool.
Yeah,
All right.
so
Yeah, go ahead. You have a use case for it?
I was just gonna say, being able to type in fields like that instead of hunting for them in the pane on the left, it doesn't sound as cool when you have like 20 or 30 fields on the left like this. But man, when you have 5, 10 tables coming out of Salesforce and there's like 300 fields down that left pane, it can be so much easier if you know what you need to just type it in rather than going scrolling for it or even searching for it.
Yeah,
That
I
was
agree.
there's a question in the chat as well about whether you
Yeah.
can only do logic equations like Booleans or if you can do anything else as well. And you can type anything you want there. You could write out like a full level of detail calculation. It's a really tiny window to do that in, but there's not really a limitation on what you can put in there.
Yeah, good. Yeah, that's the limitation, right? Is that it just, that's a crazy viz. You just don't have that same calculation window, the amount of real estate that you would normally have. So that could be a little bit trickier, but you can. There's no limitation. Good question. Cool. All right. Let's jump over to, okay, this is a good one. I have a dashboard that I built that has, some KPIs, that has a map view of sales, sales by date, sales by subcategory. Very, very straightforward dashboard. I wanted to show to the group that I found out about this like probably only a couple of years ago, but you can, if you're building a dashboard, and this becomes relevant if you're floating any object. So in this case, I do have a logo that we floated in. And if I want to have a more precise, if I want to have more precision on where I drop that logo, if I go to the dashboard tab, I can show a grid. And that grid would make it a little bit easier to line up that logo to make sure it fits with the entire dashboard. So that grid is simply helpful for more precise formatting right there. Right, and you just uncheck it when you're not wanting to show it. Right. The other tip that I find very helpful is you can hide all of the sheets in a dashboard. Right. So there's a button that so obviously all the worksheets that go into a Tableau dashboard, they would be shown right here. And if you have multiple dashboards, lots of sheets, that can get fairly unruly in the Tableau workbook. So to make it a bit cleaner, you can hide all of these sheets and unhide them when you don't want them. So that can be really helpful. Just cleaning up a workbook, it makes a handoff easier. If you're passing on a workbook to someone, potentially just a cleaner output within a Tableau dashboard. So
And
that
Stuart,
is, yeah.
if you have all your sheets hidden and you just want to unhide one, you can just unhide a single sheet from here on the dashboard, right?
How would we do that? Yeah, that's a good question.
So if you click on one of those sheets in the dashboard
Yeah.
and then click through that drop down at the bottom,
Yeah.
you can unhide. Where is it? Oh, is it not on here?
Would it be
I could have.
at the sheet level?
So at
Use
least if you
in.
go into it here,
Mhm.
then yeah, unhide sheets in that second grouping there.
I
Right.
see it. All right, so you have to go to the sheet and then you could unhide that sheet.
Go
Yeah.
back to the dashboard, and if you scroll down on the left and find one of the other sheets in this dashboard over on the left-hand sheets menu,
Yeah.
can you find one of the other ones that's in the dashboard?
Oh, yes. That would
So
be, let me see here.
there we
Okay,
go.
these right here.
Yeah, if you right click on that, can we? Okay, so we can unhide it from here as well.
Yeah, cool. I
Perfect.
just learned, yeah, two more tips. You can unhide single sheets and you can do it right from this window over here. That's awesome.
I knew there was two or
Oh,
three ways to do it. It's just a matter of finding them.
that's a good one. I learn something every time I join a call with you, Jared. Um, let's go to, okay, this is a good tip. So I also learned about this way too long in the Tableau. So imagine you're working in a workbook and you have large data sets, lots of tables, maybe lots of formulas that you've built. Um, this cylinder funnel looking icon actually allows you to filter data on your data pane based on either a calc, a dimension, a measure, or any comments that have been made. So in this workbook, I probably have like two, maybe three calculations. So when I hit the calculation option, it automatically takes me to the any formula field, right? And I could always identify that by the equal sign in front of the number that indicates there's a formula that was created, right? So that I find really helpful. And you can do the same for a dimensional field, right? That just highlights only dimensions, only measures. Um, so I find that to be really helpful, especially with larger data sets that you might have. Cool. All right, I wanted to show this one, and many people might know about this, but it's always good to recover, and that is Tableau allowing you to look at underlying data. So if I was very curious, for example, of our profitability based on subcategory, and I wanted to really kind of go into the underlying data behind tables, if you hover over a specific mark or many marks, this grid option that pops out allows you to view the data. So it gives you the summary first that's in the view, and then it gives you the full data right here. And you can see all of those kind of records right there. So that can be really helpful. And Jared, you probably have a good example, but I just think of data validation, first of all, as being really helpful. like you're going in and sort of looking at it, and you can download this into Excel or CSV. But what first jumps out to me, and Jared, tell me if I'm directionally correct, is just for data validation, looking at that underlying data.
Yeah, a lot of times what we'll see is you pull together a view and you're looking at sales or registrations or count of individuals, and you go, well, that number's way wrong. That's 10 times higher than it should be. And a
Yeah,
really
yeah.
quick way to see what's going on there is to look at this underlying data. And if you're expecting to see 250 and you see 2,500, what you might find is that when you pull up the underlying data, you have 10 rows of 250. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why we've got 2,500. And then okay, there's a level of detail issue here that I have to either go in with a calculation or fix in the underlying data from the source. Maybe there's like join logic that needs to be adjusted in the data source itself. So this just lets you get a really quick peek into the row level data
Mm-hmm.
behind the visualizations that you have or the marks that you selected.
Yeah. Yeah, you could also find this grid option. So again, we just hovered and we see the grid, right, that pops out over here. We also have it up here, right next to where we filtered by calc or a measure. So if I click that grid here, we're actually given the underlying data across the entire data set. If you have multiple tables that have been joined, or you use relationships in Tableau, you'd see an orders table and you'd see other tables that you have, and you can comb through those records right here. And you can make this window bigger. Again, you could download the data if you needed to, and you could sample the rows too. So if I only wanted 100 rows, I could do that, or 10 rows, right? And then you can also, you could sort on specific fields. So you should be able to sort like on discount if I wanted to, right? So that can be really helpful. Again, data validation, just getting a better sense of your data behind the scenes before you start reporting off of it or as you're reporting off of it. So underlying data, really helpful. Jared, did I miss anything on that one? Anything that in this window that is useful? It's like this shows all fields too.
Yeah. So you can pick and choose what you want to show. You can download the export from there if you want to take it into Microsoft Excel and mess around with it a bit there. So this can be a really easy way to get a quick export for data validation, or if somebody's looking at a dashboard and they say, well, who are the 15 people in this bar? You can grab those 15 people, export a CSV, and email it over to them real quick.
I'm just realizing how helpful this is, showing the fields, because you might have a very wide data set that you're only focused on certain elements, and you can uncheck, and that only returns those fields. That is really helpful. I'm glad we covered that. Cool. Okay.
Stuart,
My next
there's a
question
question from Frank in the chat, and this is going back to when we were talking briefly about connecting to Salesforce tables. And this may be a question that we take offline and talk with Frank directly, but he's trying to connect to Marketing Cloud personalization data, and they're looking for an alternative to Data Cloud. Do we have anything off the cuff that we'd be able to say, yeah, here's a better way to connect to Marketing Cloud personalization data? Or do you think we might just follow up after the call?
Frank, that's a really good question. Yeah, Frank, if it's all right, let's take it offline with kind of limited time we have here, and happy to discuss different approaches you could take. Yeah, we'll keep. We got a few more. I want to make sure we have enough time to get through them all. But yeah, good question, Jared. If you can make a note that we'll follow up with Frank.
Yeah, definitely.
Great. Cool. Okay. All right. The next tip that I have, we just talked about underlying data, so we're going to move into the option in Tableau to actually do a drag and drop to create a level of detail. All right. So in my view right here, I've got category and I've got subcategory. So it's breaking down the next level of detail. And I've got sales, right? So naturally Tableau is taking sales and it's first looking at furniture and then breaking that down by bookcases, chairs, furnishings, tables, etc. Right? And this total number, if I just wanted to have another column that rolled up this number across the category level, right? So this should equal $754,748, right? I could write a calculated field for that and write a fixed level of detail, Or in a little bit easier format, I could take sales, I could hold command, I believe. Make sure this is the right option. I'm going to drag it up to category, right? So I held command on a Mac, and that actually creates a level of detail for sales at the category level. I'm going to show it again. So it automatically does the right formula at the level of detail I wanted. So let me show that again. All right, so I took sales, I held command, and I drag it up to the level of detail that I want, right on top of category. Now I know it's a formula field. If I bring that into the view, there's our 754,000 that rolls up sales at the furniture level. Right? So a really simple way to create a level of detail without actually having to go into the calculation editor and write that out, right? Right in that fixed formula. Jared, any comments on that? I mean, that's one that they added not long ago in the product, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's just a nice little hack.
Yeah. All right, let's keep moving. Unless there are any questions, Jared.
Nothing new currently.
Okay. All right, this is a great tip and trick for a shared access. So right now I got my order date looking at the monthly level on my view, and I've got a measure for sales, right? So it's just looking at, my different months and years and showing a nice trend for sales. Now let's say that I also wanted to add a measure that I have in my data pane. So let's just pick profit, right? So I'm going to add profit into the view, and I also wanted to share the same axis that sales does. So that was the scenario. So I can take profit, and if we drop it right here on this axis, it brings in profit, highlighted here in blue. And we can see here, we also kicked off measure values. And so that is really nice. We can see both profit and sales sharing the same axis, right? Now yeah, go ahead, Jared. Yeah.
That probably saved you like 5-10 clicks from doing it as a dual axis, and you don't have to deal with having two different axes and then hiding one. And it's just so much faster. And if you do that 100 times over the course of the year, you're going to save yourself a couple hours.
Yes. Yeah, it's also helpful if I bring out a different view here, right? If I had sales and subcategory, right? And just looking under the bar chart, right? So if I wanted profit in there as well, we could bring the same type of thing. Now I've got a shared axis that looks at it this way, right? Sharing the same axis. I can see really, and that's an interesting way to look at, all right, tables are not profitable, right? High sales. So to take this even further, all right, you could do a shared axis and combine that with a dual axis, right? So let's drag quantity up on my row shelf, okay? So what we're going to do here is we are going to take quantity. We're going to right click on the pill, and we're going to do a dual axis, okay? Now the benefit of that is that I still have that shared axis for profit and sales, but I'm now given this its own marks card for quantity. So if you wanted to have a view where maybe we have two lines and then a bar, we could come into sum of quantity and actually change the mark type. So I could make that a bar. Now what I'd probably do is move this pill in front of it. So now I've got a view of quantity, and then I've got that profit and sales kind of pushed out in front. And we could change the color of this if we wanted to. I believe we take off that, and we could make this, something wild, right? But there's really cool stuff you could do with that, where you have a shared axis and you have a dual axis right there. This is the quantity axis. These are sales and profit axis right here. Jared, is that something you come across, like that type of analysis, that this is helpful? How common is that?
Yeah, there's a couple other reporting platforms that have support for like triple axes. And a triple axis isn't really visual best practices because you don't really have a good way to display all three. But this lets us do something similar where we can have a shared axis for measures that have similar values and then include a third measure as well. So
Hmm.
it gives you a lot of flexibility in that sense.
Yeah, that's cool. All right, let's jump to our next tip, unless we have any questions, Jared. I think we're probably good.
Nothing in chat.
Okay, and I want to be sure we didn't have any questions on that. Happy to go through that one again. Okay, this is what I would call having some spacing between if you're ever building like a grid report, for example. So in this view, I've got subcategory, and I'm breaking that up by discount, quantity, sales, and profit. Now let's say the most important measurement here is profitability. It's what we care about. That's what we're focused on in this analysis. And if I just wanted to make profit stand out a bit more, this is one tip that you could use. So what we're going to do is create a calculated field, and we'll just call this, for lack of a better naming convention, we'll call it spacing. And all I'm going to do is type in int and then null. Right? That's actually going to create a blank space. Right? So that becomes a calculated field. We're going to drop it in between sales and profit. We're going to come up here to the spacing header because we don't want that header on here. And we could simply edit the alias. When we edit the alias, we can literally just have one space mark. And then that would create some natural spacing between sales and profit in this case. And you could duplicate this, have more if you wanted to, in theory, right? And we can do the same thing, right? So that would be little technique you could use to make things stand out a bit more. All right. All right, let's keep rolling. This is a percent of total. We're going to do a percent of total in this view, and I'm going to show you how you could create a calculated field in your data pane from that. So sometimes it's a little bit trickier to write out a percent of total in a calculation window. Like I struggle with that in some cases, but it's much easier to do that in a table calc. So if I wanted to do a percent of total based off of sales and subcategory, I would come over to sales and I would do create table calc, and I would do a percent of total, right? So that does a percent of total. I can see chairs represent the most of our sales, right? It's followed by phone. And if I wanted to preserve that formula, because Tableau is baking in that logic, right? It's all right there. What I can do is drag it over to the data pane. And now I have a formula that I can use over and over again. It's already writing that out for me. So you can use a table calc and then drag and drop it to your data pane, and you'll have that percent of total saved. We do the same for if we did a running total, right? So if I brought this back out and I did sales, and instead of percent of total, I did a running total, right? Same thing, I can drag and drop it over here, call this running total. And that, do the same thing, right? So running sum. So maybe you just didn't know that function and how to write it out. And that's a really easy hack on how to save it to your data pane.
And Stuart, is the same true if you are testing calculations by typing them directly into the rows shelf or the marks card? Do you
Yeah.
have the option to just drag them over? So if you were to just type like that fixed category sum of sales into rows,
Yeah.
does it let you just drag that over as well?
Let's see. I think it does. Some sales. Okay, so I got a valid formula. We're gonna drag and drop this into the data pane. It does. Yeah.
Cool.
Think. Let's do fix LOD. Test calc. Let me double check. Yeah, it did.
Oh, yeah, and you've got fixed LED up top now
Oh,
too.
it's right here. Yeah, it's the wrong one. Hold on. Let's see. Yeah.
just in case you
Not
need
getting
it
tripped up.
twice.
Yes. Yes, good call. So yes, it does. So if you're in that same trick from earlier, you highlight this and drag it to your data pane, you can save it there too. Yeah, good call. All right. Okay. This is a fun tip right here. This has to do with adding totals. So in Tableau, there are a number of ways you can add totals in the product. Right now on the view, I have category and subcategory, and that is breaking down the data based off of profit and sales, two measures I picked. Right. Now, a lot of people in Tableau, they go to analysis and they go to totals right here. Right. And that is if they want to add a grand total or a column total or subtotals, right? I'm going to show you an easier way to do that in Tableau. So you can go to the analytics tab and you can drag and drop in your totals, right? And that's not the tip either. If you didn't know that, that can be helpful too. You can add in your subtotals, right? The tip would be instead of dragging totals onto the view, if you wanted to add both column and subtotals, you can drag it right into the view here, and that'll apply both. That'll apply your subtotals as well as your grand total. And if you wanted to push these to the top, you can right click on the grand total and you can say column totals to the top. And you'll have them at the top.
If you have like a long scrolling table in a dashboard and you don't want people to have to scroll all the way to the bottom for the grand totals, that's really helpful.
Right. If we had like product name in here, like make it bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like really helpful. All right. Yeah, they're just kind of sticking out here. Yeah. It's a tip within itself. Cool. So again, just drag and drop totals out and you can pop it right into the view. That's how you do that one. All right. Okay, so this one has to do with if you have a view where you want, like in this view, I'm breaking down region, subcategory, category, and manufacturer. And if I just wanted like a different layout for this, like kind of one record for each, like Jared, you might be able to better explain this, but I want to have just one line, right, for each manufacturer. You can in the row shelf, and you'll probably be able to explain this better. You can type index, right? And then index is a really helpful function. And if you make it discrete, we can put it in front of our region, and we can simply hide. If I do over here, oops, that didn't do it. I'm going to do it right here. We're going to go to index, and I'm going to.
Yeah, you got it. Yep, perfect.
Uncheck show header. I said it produces a better looking grid in this example. And then let's just say that you have a view that doesn't have a measure, right? So Tableau has these ABCs that are out here inherently, and it's waiting for you to put in a measure, right? Let's say you didn't have that. I've had clients that have these survey data or some type of data that there's actually no measurement, and you just want to hide that, the ABCs. So the way to hide, one way, because there are many ways, is that you can go to the marks card and change that to a polygon. That'll remove the ABCs. If you've ever wondered how to get rid of those, that is how you do it.
Yeah, and then you can like remove the column dividers in formatting so that you don't have vertical lines going through it. There's a handful of ways to kind of address that. But yeah, just cleaner, more easy to read tables between not having those ABCs. And then the index function, what Tableau does automatically is it suppresses repeating values. So it's going to take all those centrals and all those accessories and just list it once and then have that one big cell. Some people really like that. Some people don't. If you're working with people that don't want to see that and they want to see one value per row on every row of the table, then you can throw that index in front, uncheck show header, and now you've got a table that does not suppress repeating values.
Yeah, it's a really helpful one. All right. Jared, any questions coming through? We good on chat window?
We are good.
Okay. All right. We've got, see, it's almost 1:42 Eastern. Okay. We've got a few more to go through here. Actually, we got a lot. Okay. I got to get cranking here. Okay. All right. This one is really helpful. I'll go through it kind of fast. It is replacing pills and using the command option on a Mac to copy fields. So let me show you what I mean. So replacing a field. Let's say in my view, I wanted to look at, instead of sales, I changed my mind. I want to look at profit now. Most people might kind of bring profit out here and they take off sales, right? In Tableau, you can actually drag and drop pills on top of themselves. So if I take profit and drag it on top of sales, it'll just replace it with profit. That's one helpful tip. You can drag and drop pills on top of themselves. Now you can also hold on a Mac, you can hold the command option. So if I hold down command, and let's just say I wanted to bring profit to color, it keeps profit on the row shelf. It also duplicates it, and you could have it on a different, you could have it somewhere different entirely, right? And we could copy it again and bring it to filters, right? So that's just a quick shortcut key to copy pills, right?
Yeah, so it's command on Macs, and what is it, Stuart? Control for PCs.
Yeah, someone check us on the call if you're trying these, if that's the right shortcut key. We can post about the shortcut. I use a Mac, so it's like harder for me to know what it is on a PC, but there are shortcut keys, the equivalent.
Yeah, Blake in the chat confirmed it is control for PC. Thank you, Blake.
Control to copy. Thank you, Blake. Awesome. All right, this is another tip. So this is a trick. If you had a view that had lots and lots of measures on there, right? And you want to drag everything off for a certain amount of pills, right? So if normally I would start dragging these off, and I'll show you a quicker way to do that. You can hold the shift button, right? And you can grab the pills you want, you can take them off like that, right? And you could do that if it was on the row shelf, on the column shelf, it works nicely in measure values, right? But I can, again, hold shift and I could take out, drag them off the view, and they're gone. Holding shift will do that. That might save you some time. You got lots of measures on there.
Yeah, we've had clients with tables that literally have upwards of 50 measures in them. So if you have data like that, that's a real time saver.
Yeah, it can be. I wanted to show this one. I call this like how to start a grid report. That can sort of be a little bit confusing in Tableau, I think. And an easy trick to start a grid report in Tableau, so not something visual, but something more like tabular. You can drag and drop the pills, and you've probably seen me do this throughout today. You can take a measure and just place it right where you see the ABCs and where you see show me pop out. And that'll actually fire off a grid. And then we can do the same thing for profit. And now we start to kick off measure values, and we can start to add different elements there. It's a really easy way to start off a grid. You could also double click from the data pane, and that will also fire off a grid in this example. Right? So I find that helpful in Tableau. If I want a grid report, I usually start it that way. And if we want to make it visual, we go to show me and pick a visualization, right? All right, Jared, I probably need some help with this one. This one is really interesting. And I saw this, and by the way, all of these tips are not my own tips. These have come from the Tableau community. There's some really good videos on YouTube, like speed tipping from Tableau visionaries. So I want to be clear that I can in no way take credit for these tips. These are all out there on YouTube and many, many more. And this is one that I saw yesterday from a few years ago. And this is an option to give users where they can zoom in to a visualization. All right. So we'll kind of see this come to fruition as we get going here. All right. So, and Jared, keep me in line with doing this correctly, because this is a bit more technical for me. So here's what we're going to do. I've got in the view month of order date. I've got an average quantity. So in order to get a zoom effect, we're going to build a parameter, we're going to build a calculated field. But the first steps we're going to do is we're going to right click on this axis. We're going to edit the axis. And we're going to not include 0. Okay, that'll be very important. We're not going to include 0. Okay. So then we're going to create a parameter up here. There are a couple ways to get to a parameter. Let's go to create a parameter. All right. I'm going to call this zoom question mark. The data type is going to be a string. We're going to list this out. It's going to be no and yes. Very simple parameter. Name of it, zoom, data type string, no or yes as a value. All right. I'm going to go ahead and show the parameter control. All right. Now, I'm going to create a calculated field, and I'll call this zoom also. All right. The formula I'm going to use is if zoom, and that's referencing the parameter right here, equals, let's say no, then 0, end. Right. That's going to be it. That's the formula. We're going to take that calculated field. We're going to drop that on detail. Right. We're going to now go to analytics. We're going to go to tabs here. If you didn't know, this is where you can add average lines, trend lines, constant lines, and all kinds of additional functions in Tableau. We're going to bring out a reference line, and we're going to make sure to drop it on the average quantity. Okay. Now it's referencing, because we have that calculated field on detail, Tableau can reference it. There's that formula we made. We called it zoom, right? So I'm going to call it, we're going to go with zoom on the value. We're going to do no label. And then we're going to uncheck show recalculated line, right? That should be good to go, right? So now in my parameter, I am not zooming in this view. If I hit yes, it's going to take that into a zoom. So that is an option you can have. And maybe you have like a crazy trend and you want users to look at it a bit more. It's the same view, just zooming into it a bit more so people have, easier finding numbers or content. Jared, did I do that one correct? It looks like it worked.
Yeah, you nailed it. And like you were saying, this is just a way to give your end users a couple of different views of the same data. If we present it with this zoomed in view, ignoring the zeros, then we get a much clearer view of where those peaks and valleys are in the data. Mm-hmm. But it might also look a little bit scarier because like, oh man, well, some of those low points, that's like almost nothing. But I mean, really, it's like 3.4. It's not like it's 0. Right. So you can zoom in to get a better idea of where those high points and low points are and what the trends are relative to each other. But then if you zoom back out, it kind of flattens that line again, and you can see, okay, average quantity's been pretty steady. Mm-hmm. So both views are valid. It just depends on what works best for your data, and this is a way to give your end users a couple of options.
Yeah, cool. All right, we have 10 minutes. I'm gonna try to cruise through we got a few more. This next one is what I would call like, you have a specific, measure dimension on the marks card. So right now I'm looking at sales by subcategory, and profit is on color. All right, so I just took profit, right, and that's on color. Maybe that's how I set up the view. I learned this way too late in my Tableau journey, but you can actually change the mark, what mark it is in the view by clicking right here. So if I wanted to change that to the size where profit is dictated by the size of the bar, you could do that. If I just wanted it to label, I could do that. So that is could be a time saver. You just kind of switch these around. Right. All right, this one is quick. So there's an option in Tableau, like maybe you have a workbook that is a data source has been published, and there's a formula field that you can only edit a copy, or just generally you want to understand, where the field came from, the formula that was derived in Tableau, or where it came from in a database table. You can right click on any dimension or measure in Tableau, and you can hit the describe button. And so that actually, in this case, in a formula field, it would say, it shows the underlying logic. right? It shows that it's the aggregation, the type, it's a calculated field, it's a continuous measure, etc. You can right click and you can describe your dimensions and measures in Tableau. Let's see what happens if we do a region. Yeah, so it will give us some more, even like the domain members. Here are all the members in that field. It's like really helpful from like a summary standpoint, get an idea of your data behind the scenes by right click and describe.
Yeah, if you're doing some validation and you pull a field into your view that just returns all null values, that's a good way to check and see, all right, am I filtering out everything but null? Is there something wrong with the calculation? Or is there just no values in this field? Especially if it's a new data set, you could right click and go, oh, well, there's nothing in the region field. So I probably need to use a different field for this view.
Yeah, that's a good one. Cool. Okay, this one is using the tooltip to provide context in a dashboard. So let me show you what I mean. So if I go to a calculated field, I'll call this question mark, right? If I just do a quote and then and put a question mark and wrap another quote, right? This would be a valid formula. This could be any text. I just did a question mark because what I'll do is drag that on the text, right? And if I go up here, I can make the size of this much bigger. Maybe it's 24, hit apply, highlight the whole thing, 24, maybe it's bold, right? Now I've got this question mark icon. You might be wondering, well, why do we have a question mark? Well, if people come in and look at a dashboard that you've built and they have any questions, right? That might be useful if you, in the tooltip, you take out the question mark and you provide context here about the report, right? So when they hover, you might have some really helpful guidance for them, right? So I could go back to the dashboard that we built earlier, and I could go to a floating object and let's find that pill. That's going to be hard. What did I call that, Jared? Question mark. There it is.
There you go.
If I could drag out that sheet, right? Hide the title. We could fit the entire view, right? And now I've got this nice question mark that could be right here, right? And that would provide context. That's one trick, right? You could obviously do hidden text tables or text option from objects, but that's one way. People have questions, they could get them in a dashboard. All right. Well, let's see, Jared, how many more we have. Okay, the performance recorder. I'm curious if people on this call have heard about the performance recorder. Let's say you have a dashboard that is pulling from a gigantic data source, and or even so that you just have, you're concerned about the performance for Tableau on your end users. Tableau in the desktop tool has a performance recording option. So if you go to help and you go to settings of performance, you can start a performance recorder. What that does is it starts to record the actions that are happening. So you would actually go through the dashboard and start to click on your filters and engage with the report as an end user would. And then Tableau will take a log of that and it'll tell you precisely where you're having performance degradation, where there are issues that you could fix. So if you've got any workbooks, dashboards that are not up to the speed that you want, this can be really helpful to using the performance recorder. And it actually spits out, Jared, if I'm not mistaken, it spits out like another copy in Tableau desktop that does the analysis, right? It automatically bakes in the analysis. Is that right?
Yeah, it opens up like a Tableau dashboard of the performance recording, and you can click through and see which processes are taking the longest. Is it the queries? Is it the actual viz generation? And it'll kind of let you know where things are getting bogged down so that you can make adjustments.
Right. That's cool. All right. Okay.
Pamela asks, can that be logged when the users are in the published database in the browser?
Performance recording on the web? I think you can. Pamela, we will double check.
Pamela, does that get to what your question is asking? If you can kind of use the performance recorder in the web? Okay, perfect. Yeah, let me check on that.
Jared, do a quick search. We have a few minutes. I'll keep going and we'll get you an answer, Pamela. Good question. Okay, this next tip is removing grid lines across the entire workbook. So in Tableau, you'll notice in this example, I've got a dimension and a measure, and Tableau has grid lines right here, right? And sometimes you might not want those on. Well, you could go to format and you could go to grid lines and you could take that off, right? And they're gone, right? But what if you wanted to, you knew in your dashboard, you wanted them gone across the whole workbook. What you can do is go to format, that tab, hit workbook, and then down here, there are lines. It says grid lines right here. So what I can do is instead of automatic, I can say off. Now, every time I build a view, it will take the grid lines off, right? That can save you time if you're building a view that you don't want any grid lines. So that's a good one. This one is using the thermometer in Tableau for picking a precise color. So Tableau defaults to this nice blue, but if I wanted to pick a color precisely for a dashboard, if I go into more colors, there's a thermometer option, and that lets me go to a completely different window if I wanted to and select a color, right? I just went to a different monitor and picked a color. Now you could also, in this option up here, if you had the exact hex color, you could do that right here, right? So I could type that in, that's white, right? And make it, yeah. So you could type in the hex color, you could use a thermometer to get a precise color that you have. Right? Cool. And then the last tip I have, I'll try to leave like a minute or two for questions. Let's do this one. This is a better tip. This is how you can rename a field dynamically in Tableau from the row or column shelf. So let's say category, I wanted to change the name. I can double click in the category. I can do a double slash, and then I can type new category. Right. Jared, what am I missing here? New category.
Oh, so you want to go in between category and category there?
Yes, let me do it again. I've forgotten my own tip. Yeah, double click, / /
Then just type out new category, and then shift enter, and you're good to go.
Okay.
I think we've got a.
Salim, would you mind going on? Let me see if I can mute Salim. Hold on.
Perfect.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. So yeah.
All right. Let's do that. Let's do that again. So renaming the field doesn't change the name of the data pane. We double click into the dimension in this case, double / we type in what we want this to be now. We hit shift and return, and that renames it in our view right here.
So this is a nice way if you have really long field names, if you're the sort of person who names your calculated field average of sales across category for past 3 years, you can change the header in the chart by just writing in a comment and then dropping the field to the second line. This is also a really nice way if you have a table that has sales, average profit, quantity, average quantity, and you're running out of space on that header, you can alias all of those averages to just say average. And if you try to do that by right-clicking and editing the alias on the measure, it's going to tell you that there's already a measure with the alias average. But if you do it this way, you can name as many as you want, the same exact thing, and it won't give you an error.
Yeah, it's a good call. Guys, we're right up on time. We have a lot of tips. There are a few I couldn't get to. Hopefully this was helpful. We'll have the recording. Yeah, the rename. I know that I learned that one yesterday from my team. So hopefully this was helpful, and reach out if you have any questions. And again, hopefully this makes things in Tableau a bit faster.